Hi, my name is Simeon Brown. I'm a reporter at Channel 4 News. A lot of my work is kind of about equality. It's about young people. It's about the big kind of questions that have really dominated the news this year, which is about equality and enabling that we have a level playing field. Nowhere does that matter more than in the world of work and really ensuring that talent is being brought in from all parts of our country, all parts of the world, and ensuring that we're really ensuring that there is a level playing field. And that's fundamentally what today is about and today's report. So this is the virtual launch of, Career Ready's research, boosting social mobility everywhere. Now, Career Ready actually just turned 18, which means that officially Career Ready is ready to drink, but sadly all the pubs are closed. So we're gonna have to put the champagne on ice publicly anyway. But it's a really huge achievement that Career Ready have made for over 18 years now, almost across 2 decades. They have been ensuring that young people from disadvantaged backgrounds, 150,000 of them to be specific, have been linked with employers all up and down the country and really trying to boost social mobility and ensure that talent is representative in our elite industries. So today, what we have is a huge chance to look at how we can ensure that continues, especially at this moment in time where the entire labour market is being disrupted. So there are huge kind of questions for policymakers, for businesses, and for all of us about how we ensure there is a level playing field and that people can get on and move on effectively. So you would have already seen a video from the CEO of Career Ready, which shows the work that they've been doing over the past 18 years. And the report that they put together, looking at the impact of their work, really does highlight some really key themes. And that comes around kind of boosting internships, that comes around ensuring that post-education attainment and career prospects are achieved not only through internships, but through a localized approach. This would look like effectively ensuring that local companies are taking the lead and are creating employment opportunities that support local networks for those young people. There's also a sense that what really needs to be looked at is a sense of increasing educational attainment too. So within the research, there are a lot of meaty things to be thinking about and a lot of things to do too. And to discuss that, we have a really great panel. But before we get to introducing who they are, it's time to kind of take a snapshot of what everybody here really thinks about the opportunities that young people from disadvantaged backgrounds actually have. Do young people from disadvantaged areas need to move out to move on? And so I'd like to do a quick poll of everybody here to get a sense of what everybody thinks. So that poll should be appearing on your screen now. I'm going to log in to see if everybody is voting. Has everybody voted? Can everybody see the poll? Okay. Well, let's see where it is. Okay, people are voting, that's good. It's good to vote. That's certainly been the moral of the last election anyway in the US. Okay, let me see what the results are. Okay. They're coming in. This is almost as slow as the US election. What's going on? By this time next week, we'll still be trying to call the election or call the vote. Okay. So let's see where we are. Has everybody voted? Okay, yes, everyone's voted. Great. I can't see the outcome the way everyone voted. Everyone voted, but I can't see just yet. So 26% said that young people do have to move out, and 74% said no. That's interesting. That's interesting. It'd be good to get a sense from the panel what they make of the outcome of the vote. So before I kind of open this out and invite questions from everybody who's here from the audience, I wanted to introduce our panel. We have a kind of a really strong panel We have the CEO, Career Ready. We have Kumbo. We have James, who's head of Citibank. We have Adam, who is the associate director and partner of Opinion, who also partnered on the research. We also have Lucy, who was a Career Ready alumni. And we have Dr. Vanda from the Equality Trust, the executive director. And so it'd be great to kind of get them to discuss their reaction to that poll, but also to actually answer the question, do young people from so-called disadvantaged backgrounds, do they need to move out to move on, and to look at them with the questions about what are some of the barriers that are preventing young people from effectively having the best opportunities possible, especially young people who between the age of 15 to 18 are beginning to kind of get a sense of how big or small the world can be for them. So yeah, if I can bring our panel through, and if I start with Tukumbo as the CEO of Career Ready, I wanted to know, like, do young people from disadvantaged backgrounds, do they need to move out to move on? And what do you make of the response to the poll?
First of all, thanks, Simeon. I'm surprised about the response of the poll. I was expecting a large proportion to vote for yes. I think from our experiences and my personal experience is I grew up in the East End of London, pre-Olympics, before it had that facelift. And it was very much a challenging environment to grow up in. And I think essentially it's about exposure. If a young person in the environment gets the exposure and the insight and the awareness to make informed decisions, that can have a huge impact on their career aspirations. However, for many young people across the country, that isn't the case. So ideally, I don't think young people should have to move from their communities, from their family, in order to get far and get ahead with their careers. But the reality is that, you know, the opportunities are related to your network, and the opportunities generally are related to big metropolitan hubs across the country. So as I mentioned, I grew up in the East End of London, and although it wasn't an affluent experience, I still had the privilege of living in the capital. So I still had the privilege, although money was hard to come by, I could get on the tube and get to central London in a matter of minutes, where an abundance of opportunities were available to me. So yeah, I think it's a mixed bag. So the idea of career opportunities being available across the country, but also the idea of how powerful one's network can influence your awareness and the capability of making informed decisions around your career.
I mean, it'd be interesting to see, obviously, of course, you know, this was obviously a snap poll, so we're not going to be doing huge research into who voted, but it'd be interesting to get a sense of who voted, and if many of the people who voted no are from London, as opposed to other parts of the country where people do feel more pressure to move. And I really wanted to get other members of the panel to really discuss and unpack the idea of having to move out to move on in life, because certainly many of the young people who I've been interviewing up and down the country over the last few years, especially from outside of London, they do feel like a lot of the opportunities, like you say, Tukumbo, are definitely concentrated in, you know, maybe a Manchester or a London or a Leeds, and then there are other parts of the countries that are hollowing out. I mean, Dr. Vanda, I mean, what is your response to the poll, and what do you make on young people having to move out to move on?
Yeah, I think my reflection was similar to Tukumbo's. I was very surprised, and my first thought was, are all these people from London? I mean, I grew up in Chester in the Northwest in the 70s and 80s, and, you know, for us, moving out and moving up was going to Liverpool or going to Manchester, going to those big cities where there was a more diverse population, but also there were more opportunities. And I think, you know, one of the problems is this absolute concentration of jobs, of wealth, of opportunities in the South. Now, obviously, the civil service has done a job of, for example, moving departments out to different parts of England. So, it is possible to run major departments and major businesses from outside of London. I just wish more people realised this. But we also have to look at things like, subsidised transport. Transport is hugely much more subsidised in the south. If you look at transport costs in the north, then they're significantly higher proportionately, where obviously wages are significantly lower. So I think it is, I think unfortunately we do still have this phenomenon of the jobs, the opportunities. If you think about my sector, the charity sector, most of the HQs will be, of the big organisations at least, and many of the smaller ones will be in London. And then it's moving. I think what I would put a bit on this, and I would say actually, what do we think of as success? Because if we think of success as moving out, going to university, going to work for a big company, having a good and big salary, being secure, that's one version of success. But actually another version of success may be training as a mechanic, building up your own garage, living in your own, living in your own community and being financially stable that way. So I think we need to interrogate a little bit what we mean by success.
I mean, I think that's a good question. I wanted to bring in Lucy as a kind of career-ready alumni and a young person making her way in the world. I mean, for you, Lucy, what does success look like for you? What do you consider to be success? And can you tell us a bit more about your own journey? I know that we've seen the video, but it'd be good to kind of get in your own words too.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, like Takumbo said, I live in Manchester, so again, I think I've always seen that the opportunities were on my doorstep, and I never wanted to move, so I never felt like I had to move to get a good opportunity. I didn't want to leave my family, and I was lucky enough that I knew that I'd be able to find a role that I was interested in Manchester. But actually, Wanda's just said something really interesting, is that even though I'm only 5 miles away from Manchester city centre, it would still cost me about £10 per day to either drive and park or get the train into Manchester. So it's still, even if you're quite close, there's some disadvantaged areas around Manchester that could mean you still might not be able to get a job in the city centre. But I suppose in terms of success for me, so while I was at college, I really wasn't sure what that looked like. I thought that success was going to university and then getting a job based on my qualification, and I didn't know what that was. I'd always been told, I'd always had quite good grades at school, so I was told to go into something like banking or accountancy, and I hadn't really given it much thought until I joined Career Ready. And I didn't really know what careers were out there. I think at school, you're told about being a nurse or a doctor or an accountant or those sort of professions, but you don't really know, the other roles that are available in businesses. So certainly when I got the internship, I did go to a bank, which is what I thought I wanted to do, but I was actually placed in the marketing team, and I just found that I just really enjoyed being much more creative. And actually success to me now is obviously having a job where I'm secure and I can keep learning and keep developing my skills, but it's also a place where you can be happy and, where you feel like your ideas are valued. And I certainly found that I really enjoyed marketing, even though it was, a secure career and it was in a business environment, it was still a place where, you could be a little bit more free with your ideas. And because of doing that internship, that's when I realised that that's a career that I wanted to look into. And even though it is quite a well-known career, marketing, it was never discussed at school. You never learnt about the different roles that were available. So it was just really interesting to have that experience in the working environment. And that's what made me want to look at that as a career. And I was able to find an apprenticeship. And actually that was a local business. So even though I'm close to Manchester, and I'd pictured going to work for a big bank or another big firm, actually I ended up working for a company with only 10 people. And it was local, it was, a really small building, but it just meant that actually I could build a lot of my skills, and I got so much more experience and responsibility than I would have done in a larger company. And even though I probably wasn't paid the same, that was what success looked like for me, because actually I was able to just develop myself a lot more. And I think as a young person, that's what success should look like, is finding an opportunity where you can keep developing yourself while still obviously having that security. So that's what I think that success should be looking for, just somewhere where you can develop and you can explore your own ideas. And I don't think young people are told enough the impact that they can have on an organisation. I think we're told that you go in and you work your way up, but actually being at that first level where you've just come from university, you've got all these ideas, and perhaps you're not used to the business environment, perhaps you're not used to all existing processes and the way you do things. I actually think a young person adds a lot of value to a business, and I think that should be told more often.
I think that was really. I think you made a lot of great points there. Points were made, and I think a lot of that was also relatable to me myself. I mean, I did my GCSEs ages ago. I mean, I've been a young person for years, but I remember like my school, which there was like I think 80% of my school did not get 5 A to C's. So 1 in 5 people got 5 A to C's. It was a really poor school. And I remember when they did work experience they lined up for us was jobs in call centers or jobs in Boots or whatever. We weren't even being paid. And it was a sense of like trying to make our way in the world of work. We just had no kind of expectations of how big or how small the path was. We just were completely in a vacuum. But when I spoke to friends at university who went to more privately educated schools, grammar schools, they had all this sense of, oh, this is VC, this is venture capital. Oh, this is media, this is production, this is how you, and I was just like, how do you even know this stuff? And I guess it's that kind of the empowerment of that kind of cultural capital, which is key. I want to bring in Adam as the Associate Director of Opinion, who are behind the research. And I want to ask him, what are some of the trends that the report picked up on, and what are some of the things that have basically changed to enable young people today to have more opportunities, but not maybe ensure that the playing field is level enough?
Yeah, I think just to pick up on one of the things we talked about earlier is that the research really shows that what Career Ready facilitates is the ability to actually stay where you are. So there's lots of research out there that a lot of young people, they feel like they have to go to university, they then move away from university, they become part of a kind of transitory group of people because they're there for someone for 3 years, and they might think of going somewhere else, to maybe to London or Manchester, as we talked about, these kind of metropolitan hubs for work. And companies are recruiting people from that transitory kind of group of people. But actually what we've seen with the Career Ready work is that the people who've been on the program, they haven't moved away. Their life satisfaction is higher than their peers, and they're able to have the relationships with kind of that network point. They've got relationships with colleagues, they've got great networks in their workplace, but they've still got their family connections and their friends, and they haven't had to, for a lot of people, particularly graduates, they move away and they might move to London, for example, or Manchester. They'll develop networks and connections with their colleagues, but their families are often hundreds of miles away. And particularly at the moment, I mean, that's really important, isn't it? Kind of family connection and having those local to you. And we've seen that with the research that we've done, the Career Ready alumni have got both of those. And that's really strong because that's them helping them in their career and to grow, perhaps in a way that their peers haven't, who live locally to them, but they haven't left their peer group, and they're still connected to their families, and that's really important. I think that's really exciting to see that, and through the research it comes across very strongly. The other thing that comes through quite strongly is life satisfaction, and to that point earlier, that actually it's not that everyone has got kind of amazingly kind of high-flying jobs, but actually people are in the right job and they feel confident in what they're doing. Confidence comes through when we interview people, when we ran surveys. Confidence came across a lot, and it's just a lot of it driven by just the experience of being in the workplace. But actually a lot of people have never been in a workplace. They don't know what do you wear to an office. Do you have to ask permission to do things in a working environment? How do you when do you take your lunch breaks? Even simple things like that. Coming out of the school or college environment where almost everything, you're told what to do at what time, it's very, very different being in a workplace. And actually, not enough young people have that experience. And that's something that it builds people's confidence. They go, okay, I know how to operate in a workplace. And that just gives them confidence to go and talk to other companies, whether small companies or large companies. And that helps them in their overall sense of well-being, and the fact that they're probably living in a place where they want to live with their family, close to their families, close to their friends. Actually, that the whole kind of package of life is just kind of better than often what many of their peers are getting.
I mean, and so Adam, what came out of the research was the kind of importance of kind of basically local networks, both, I guess, in terms of supporting success, but I guess in ensuring kind of economic linkages, and also just ensuring that young people can develop and grow, and then that benefits not just maybe the big metropolitan cities, but the areas themselves. And I want to know what more can kind of, what needs to be done both from companies and you know, authorities, both central government, but also locally, to really ensure that that ecosystem flourishes.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I guess the research doesn't go into detail on that, but I guess it's building those connections. So a lot of it is how do you create links between probably schools and colleges and local businesses? How do you facilitate really good work experience and really good opportunities for young people to understand what business is like? It probably isn't just going to a company for a week. It's probably longer. I mean, the Career Ready program, I forget the number, I think it's 4 weeks. You're in a company for the internship. And things like that clearly demonstrate that you understand a business after you've been there for 4 weeks. So those kinds of things, building those connections, is clearly really, really important.
Yeah, definitely. And now I want to bring in James now, the head of Citibank UK. Now, you know, the big money man here, the big money man here. And I wanted to look at, like, so I mean, how do you ensure a massive kind of company, corporate entity like Citibank effectively is, you know, really ensuring that its pool of talent is broad, and that it's finding people from different backgrounds and from different parts of the country, from different ethnicities, and how do you ensure that that talent is developed?
Well, I think we've all been listening to a lot of people who know a lot and have very, very good arguments. We listen to ourselves because we're all human beings. But in practice, I think many businesses, and I think finance has been particularly poor at it, have been quite poor at actually turning those ideas and the things we listen to and we agree with into actual actions which change the situation. And so I got a couple of examples which were really informative to me. One of them is, you know, when Career Ready started 18 years ago, we didn't have anyone in Belfast. Now, Belfast is a large metropolitan area, but you know what? Anyone who wanted to be aspirational, to further themselves, really felt they had to leave Northern Ireland to go for work. And I won't bore you with the detail, but we started operations in Belfast, working with the local community, taking on local people. And actually, if I was to tell you from zero, sort of 15 years ago, we'll go over 3,000 employees in Belfast sometime next year. It's been a terrific story, and it's mainly been young local people. And the great thing is we provided the jobs there, but best for the people is that they've been able to stay in their communities and actually be role models for the people who remain where they're from. And we found that that's accelerated our ability to make changes in the system. I think the other point about having to move away to places like London is it's a hell of a lot easier to do if you're from a wealthy background and your family supports you. It's not just being away from them. It's there's not that many people that can easily pay the travel costs and actually living there when they get there. So from our point of view, we've learned a lot from Belfast, a different culture. We actually found that because it was brand new, we also broke a lot of the traditional patterns of who we recruited and where from. So our partnerships with local schools and colleges, very different. The second big learning I've had is 18 years of working with Career Ready. And if I was to tell you that we will take in Dublin, Belfast, London and Edinburgh about 100 Career Ready students every summer. And it's fantastic because all the things that have already been said about what those young people get from actually seeing real people in a real workplace and actually, these are bright people, they know what they're up to. But sometimes just seeing it in action in front of them is a hell of a lot better than learning it from a book or having a teacher explain it. I think the other thing to remember, though, is that it works both ways. And the impact on our people when they have these people from this different background and they get that these are, And although they're very different in many, many ways, they're very similar in many ways. And it's as much about seeing the same things in other young people who are fun, who are ambitious, who are talented. And I always reckon our young people and some of our older people in our teams who look after the interns and take them in and give them that experience get us absolutely as much out of it as the interns do. And that all changes the understanding and breaks down these barriers and these silos of different people from different backgrounds. And if you truly believe that diversity brings better thinking, better decisions, better opportunities, etc., why would you have these self-imposed constraints on the opportunity to get a broader range of different people into your organization? And Career Ready has done that. It's the proudest thing for me is when I heard that as well as supporting Career Ready's programs and giving people that opportunity by bringing them into our offices and giving them the tutoring and the mentoring and the transfer of expertise, actually we'd started hiring people from Career Ready. And in November, we started our very first non-university recruitment program in partnership with Career Ready. And that's the first time my organization in living history has recruited someone who didn't come from one of these sort of top class universities, so called. And that just changes things, and that will accelerate.
Thanks a lot. I wanted to before we just moved on, I wanted to bring in some comments I've seen. I think there's been some great comments, especially in response to the poll. I'm going to pick out a few of them. Martina Greaves said, "I voted no and I am based in London. Think this makes a huge difference." Somebody who was anonymous said, "It very much depends on the industry and the role. Obviously, people can work remotely or for themselves, but building a culture, community remotely can be challenging. These aren't the workplaces locally." Jen Hartley said, "Moving out to move up. Young people shouldn't have to move out, but reality is they often do. I grew up in a council house in South Cumbria, beautiful landscape, but no career insight, guidance and opportunities at all, and no connections between local schools and employers or mentors for those that didn't have them at home." Those were some actually recommendations from the report in terms of mentoring and local connections. After uni, I moved to Birmingham and then London. There was also a comment I saw that I thought was really good. Some people were saying, I think Caroline from Stoke-on-Trent said she doesn't believe you have to leave to succeed, and also agrees it depends on how you define success. There was another point I thought that was really good. I think Sarah Webster, interesting to hear these findings. The evidence more broadly shows that social mobility has only increased in the last 10 years in London, in which there's a lot of research that does show, especially the growth in achievement from schools, comprehensive schools in London has made a huge difference, and also created biases against maybe other parts of the UK. My personal experience, says Sarah, is that I would never have found the career I love without moving from northeast London to Scotland, and my view of the world and its opportunity is hugely different to that from moving. Yeah, it's hugely different to that of the school friends who have stayed there. How do you change the mindsets of parents and communities so that young people work out what their dream really is and find a career route that just isn't the obvious one, e.g. what your mum did for the local industry? Now, I mean, right now we're obviously in the middle of a hugely disruptive kind of post-pandemic disruption of the economy in terms of the labour market. And I really wanted to discuss what impact do you think COVID has created on the opportunity to boost social mobility? Has it moved us backwards, or is it now an opportunity now to move forward in terms of the ability to work remotely, therefore maybe to create more internships? Is this, what are some of the challenges and also the opportunities that being in a post-pandemic economy effectively enables? Now, I'd like to bring that to you, James.
Well, I'd say a couple of things. The first thing is, I think that the nature of this health crisis and the economic and social consequences that will continue to be around us, unfortunately, for a very long time, it's jolted a lot of people's thinking. And I go back to that point that a lot of people had already been thinking about the interaction they have with their community, with society, with other people, and had yet been slow to change in response to that, or have been over accepting of the way things are. And I think so much has changed in this particular period of time that I know that it's actually surprised us somewhat how it's emboldened people to actually throw out some of the old ways of doing things and really try very new things, having surprised themselves at new things that they have tried that have worked, like remote working, like a different relationship with technology. And we found that that's been quite empowering and quite inclusive. Now, don't get me wrong, there's a lot of people who have really suffered from the consequences of that because they haven't been able to get those benefits. But I don't think we ought to miss the opportunity that when there's a big disruptive change, let's think about all the other things that can go with that. And I think people's attitude, particularly to how they interact with other people in society, the acceptance of the logic of diversity and inclusion, but now actually moving to the practice of it, is something that we've been very pleased to see. And it's no coincidence, I don't think, that we've started this new program with bringing in non-university employees in partnership with Career Ready right in the middle of that. A lot of people might have thought, hey, that's just too hard, it's too difficult, put it off. But no, actually, it was the other way around. I think people felt bold and they felt let's accelerate now.
And Dr. Wanda, what do you think will be some of the impacts of COVID on the push for greater social mobility, which in many cases is just a push for greater equality and equality of opportunities especially? And what do you think where do you think some of the opportunities may be too?
Hi, I'm sorry, I'm suffering from a bad internet connection, so do let me know if this doesn't work. I think, unfortunately, as we've seen just over the summer, the educational opportunities for those people without access to broadband or access to teachers or schools is going to have an impact on a whole generation. We're seeing a hollowing out of the job market. We're seeing people losing their jobs and a recession, as all at the IFS has said, to end all recessions. So this is going to have deep impact on inequality. And alongside that, as we know, very much linked to that is the impact on health, on mental health, and the commensurate impact of loss of income on housing and all of those issues that, of course, are so firmly linked to income. So I think, the real problem here, and I would say we need to be looking at equality of outcome, not equality of opportunity, because we still don't have a level playing field if we're just looking at equality of opportunity, because not everybody can make good with those opportunities. I think as James has touched upon, we really have seen at all sorts of levels. I've spoken to investors, I've spoken to FTSE companies, I've spoken to schools, I've spoken to a range of organisations about the need to tackle structural inequalities. And I'm confident that, we have been campaigning on these issues for decades, but this summer has been a real catalyst for organisations to look at themselves and think, actually, we need to do far more. So I'm really encouraged by the fact that there is real will. I'm seeing real will that is being translated into action. We've been at the Equality Trust, we've been approached by numbers and numbers of organisations to help them think about not just ethnicity and race and gender and those intersections and disability, but also class and income inequality. And that really is the sort of underpinning issue that we need to tackle if we're going to have any hope, really, of building on all of this good work that organisations such as Career Ready are doing to make sure that we can actually get that impact in organisations as well.
And thanks a lot. And Tokunbo, I mean, do you see this particular moment in time of all the disruptions that we've seen and people working more from home? Do you see this as being an opportunity, or do you see it as being a disruption to a lot of the work or some of the things that you were calling for? How do you assess this moment in terms of the broader goals of Career Ready?
Yeah, it's a bit of a mixed bag, Simeon, because effectively we're here to serve a community of young people that have an abundance of talent. And for us, it's about being able to provide that bridge that enables them to realize that potential. But we can only do that in partnership with education institutions and employers. And the reality is some employers have seen this storm come in and have been brave enough to respond in it in a proactive manner. Whereas other businesses will basically mimic what happened in the last recession in 2008, 2009, and all that kind of peripheral innovative work, which was focused on getting talent from all quarters of society, suddenly just gets cut and then gets pushed off the table. So we're currently in the position where we're having a lot more conversations with those businesses that want to be proactive and want to make long-term legacy impact, reinforcing some of the findings within the report and the research. But essentially, I think our job right now as a charity is to inspire business to make that cultural shift. We're inspiring business with not just the notion of it's the right thing to do, but we're inspiring them with added value to their business objectives. And the idea of taking young people on that journey is part of the solution, because we all know talent is everywhere. The opportunities to be able to realize that talent is where we miss out on the equilibrium. So I think for me, to answer your question, it feels very much like a mixed bag. We've had to move swiftly. I mean, as a charity, we had a digital strategy and we had to accelerate a significant proportion of that in response to the pandemic. But the beauty of that now is when we're talking about the idea of internships, paid internships, potentially something next summer, which we wasn't able to do this summer, we can broaden the spectrum of where those internships can be hosted from. So there are opportunities that this pandemic has taken, or presented rather, but it's about all the stakeholders really being clear on what their value and what their aspirations are, and being courageous enough to proceed in that in quite a precarious circumstance.
And on the back of that, Adam, I mean, Tokunbo made some points there about, you know, the opportunities, but also some of the challenges, and also mentioning what happened after the 2008 crash. I remember I graduated in 2020, kind of a few years after the crash, but you could still feel the ramifications of that crash. Graduate opportunities just diminished overnight, and you know there was a huge hangover for people who left university between 2008 and 2012. And I wanted to get a sense of policy-wise now, what policy-wise, but also I guess challenges for kind of first sector and business too. What kind of things do we need to see to ensure there isn't a lost generation from effectively COVID and the COVID economic crisis?
Yeah, I mean, they're huge questions. A few points. One of them is that, yeah, we're definitely seeing at the moment that the people most affected from a lot of the research that we've done, separate to this work, but what we're doing at Opinion, is that younger people are the most affected. They're often working in retail. They're often working in jobs that are easily able to be stopped or furloughed, or where they need to be in an office or they need to be in the working environment. They've been hugely affected. But also, what we have also seen kind of historically after the last recession is that younger people are more versatile, and they're the ones who are able to get into other jobs in the longer term. Actually, it's often people who've been in careers for kind of 20 plus years who find it harder. They lose their jobs, they find it harder to retrain and move in. So I think there's a sense in which we need to be optimistic. And I guess from the research that we've looked at specifically on this is about how do companies, so the points that have been said earlier really, how do companies engage with young people now, but they're going to have to do that in different ways. But to show them what working environment looks like, but also to be honest probably with them. You know, companies are adjusting every day to how they operate. They're making it up as they go along, adjusting to what's happening now, and being honest about that and saying, you know, come on the journey with us. We're going to tell you how. And to that point about, you know, young people are digital natives. Like for them to be on as you know, a Skype call or a Zoom call, or just using their mobile devices, using a laptop, that's normal. There's no, you know, that's an opportunity to be taken potentially. And so I think there needs to be a sense of optimism. I'm also naturally an optimist myself, so I probably would say that. But I think there's lots of reasons to be optimistic, but helping people see what's the working environment like now. I think just if you can, just keep moving forward, really.
And Lucy, I mean, as you know, a young person who's making their early steps in their kind of career in the world of work, building on kind of the earlier question which I asked people, do you think young people have to move out to move on? And most people who voted anyway in the poll suggested that they didn't feel that way. Maybe 30 years ago, people might have voted differently. It's unclear, or even 10 years ago. I wanted to get a sense of whether that reflects young people feeling confident or precarious. And I wanted to know, how do you feel about the kind of the next few years? Do you feel optimistic? Are you concerned about the challenges? And you're just trying to get a sense of how you feel about the future, and also for young people.
Yeah, okay. So me myself, so I'm feeling confident now, but during, when lockdown first happened, I was furloughed. And I think that, I was 20, and I do think that it was quite weird to have the prospect of being made redundant at 20, because I'd only just joined the company that I was working for, and I was really excited about it. And I saw myself, being there for a long time and being able to work my way up and finding lots of opportunities there. So I think the prospect of being made redundant was really quite scary. Luckily, I was kept on, but I think for perhaps a lot of young people who are in roles like myself in businesses, maybe working from home, who've perhaps just started, like finished university, started on a graduate program, I do think that it was a quite nerve-wracking time. But I think like other people have said, I do think that young people adapt really well and they work really well with technology, and I do think there's a lot of opportunities there to work for a business remotely, so you don't have to move out. So even if you live somewhere that's not close to a city, somewhere remote where there aren't a lot of opportunities, I do think this is a good time to be able to work for a larger company and do it remotely. And I think that's what Career Ready have done really well, is they've responded so quickly to what was going on and offered the Digital Skills Festival, so people could learn about, how to do interviews perhaps on Zoom or just different ways of interacting professionally online. And I think that could open up some really good opportunities. So me myself, I'm quite optimistic as well, and I think this could be a really good opportunity for young people.
I mean, I don't think you're the only person who also feels that way, and I want to draw on some of the comments that have been made. I believe, I'm trying to find it, I saw a great one from Tony Madden, who said, with advances in technology as a result of COVID, the necessity to leave your area may no longer be necessary. As a result, this may regenerate local disadvantaged areas. Career opportunities need to be widely available so that those in disadvantaged areas can have access to them. Government and employers need to encourage employers to stay in their local areas if they want to. I think that's a great opportunity, but although, like Dr. Wanda said, everybody has equal access to broadband, different areas in the country also have widely different broadband speeds. There have been kind of conversations around kind of public broadband is now a utility. That kind of investment would need to come from government. The question is, who's going to demand that and ensure that happens, what the plans are. There's also another point from Anne. COVID has created an if not now, when moment, with young people disproportionately hit by cutbacks in recruitment. This has to be the moment to unlock apprenticeship levy money to fund paid internships in SMEs. There was also another one I believe I saw, but I'm aware that time is ticking. Jen Hartley said, agree, employers being brave and staying with this agenda in this climate is so critical to recovery, and it will deliver longer term business benefits, including diverse talent and locally community benefits. Some great examples of how this is working with Career Ready corporate partners. So yeah, I mean, I guess there is a sense right now that theoretically, if everybody's working from home, then where you live should not really matter at this moment in time. But that does require other challenges. I'm aware that we are running out of time. I wanted to just to come back to Kumbo as the CEO of Career Ready, just to kind of get his final thoughts of the challenges before we say goodbye. And you don't have much time, to Kumbo.
Yeah, so I'll just wrap up with a point I think Lucy made earlier, which is about young people really defining their definition of success, being brave enough to really focus on what ticks their boxes, what makes them happy, what provides that level of life satisfaction. and then using all of their power, all of their agency, all of their network to make that reality. Because I see success as equaling happiness. And I thought Lucy made that point perfectly earlier on.
I think that's a great place to finish it off. I'm just going to come back to the final poll now, which is, do young people from the so-called disadvantaged areas need to move out to move on? 28% said yes, 72% said no. I think in that sense, the fact that the majority of people here think that they don't have to move so much, I think can only be seen as a good thing in the light of the report. But we do know that there are huge challenges for boosting social mobility, especially at this moment in time. And the only way to really continue that progress during an economic recession or during an economic crisis, even though we're not technically in recession, I mean, in real terms, we actually are, because we're nowhere near where we were a year ago. But I think that right now, it requires people doing the work that you're doing. It requires pressure, and it requires the kind of awareness that now is a huge opportunity if businesses and government and policymakers in the third sector are willing to take it and to recognize it. So thanks to everybody here who's doing the work on the ground, everybody here who's making things happen. Thanks to Career Ready, thanks to Opinion for working with them to do the research. I've been Simeon Brown. It's been a great conversation. Thanks to everybody involved, people behind the scenes. And yeah, have a good day, and let's keep thinking about these questions.